Just a reminder, the chat to live stream from where actually the chat to live stream should be fine, but my live stream is slightly delayed. But I think we're live. Let me know in the chat, everyone, if you can see and hear me perfectly fine. You can see this screen perfectly fine as well, and we'll get going from there. Hey Mike, how you doing? Got some others in here. Aaron, how you doing? Braden, that's good, Mike. 25 of us in here, so that's really, really good. I'll wait a few more minutes just in case there's a couple joining a little late. But free for all a bit here. I haven't really planned whilst I have obviously made preliminary plans for this live stream. As usual, this is for you guys, it isn't for me. So awesome, Hassan. Anything that you guys specifically want me to take a look at, want me to discuss, so that could be something like how to best approach limit orders when dollar cost averaging, or how do I best read your zones, Mitch, that you do, or what's the best way to approach the service, the Discord, the market updates, token updates, anything service related, anything market related that you guys want to ask. Go ahead and shoot. I hope I'm not blurry and that's just on my screen. Am I quite blurry on your guys' screens? I've got the live stream up myself and it looks quite blurry. I don't like it. Quality auto. Let's go to 180 60p. Let's see if that works. I'm gonna quickly refresh it. Oh. Anyways, 7:03 now. Okay, still a bit blurry. That's okay. Alrighty, so without further ado, we'll get started. I thought I'll briefly explain some of the market update. I'm not sure if any of you had the chance to read through it. I did post it a bit late. I apologize about that. I've had a few things on today and then got around to finishing it a bit later this Arvo. But really what this market update does is it actually leeches off a news piece that I showed in the market update last week. Little Mitch. Yeah. But I discussed how Bitcoin rushed to an all-time high, similarly to both, gold and silver I've shown in the last market update, but not in this article, as a result of the debasement trade that's going on globally around the world. Obviously, you guys in my research report have an entire state of the Bitcoin cycle research report that if you want to know on a high time frame where I stand on things, it's best you go and read this research report. It's from over a month ago now. What is it? The 14th of October. So it's 5 weeks ago now, where I discussed why via core on-chain metrics, macroeconomics, looking at this, the state of stagflation, why I believe we're still in a liquidity cycle, and why this Bitcoin cycle might not be historically mirroring prior Bitcoin cycles that were based in easing monetary conditions. Well, not easing monetary conditions, eased, full stop, with 0% interest rates, some negative globally around the world. There weren't high interest rates like there are now. We had COVID stimulus. We had checks being put into our pockets for us staying at home. We had nothing to spend our money on. That obviously wasn't the case with these two, but particularly with our last one. And you can see the difference in a passive structural institutional bid and what happens when ETFs and other parties and marginal buyers come to the stage to invest in Bitcoin. But really, that's what this new market update is about. Is building on why I believe Q3 and Q4, and so what this research report builds on, is stating that I still believe we have some time to go. If you do go to the last market update, funnily enough, and maybe it was right, maybe it was wrong, I really explored the idea of cycles and looking at how. So I think I released this when I was at the 10th of October at 9:25. No, that can't be right. Maybe I replaced the chart? No, because then Sunday. Oh no, that's right. So so I released this update about 12 hours. I think you don't go to everything. Okay, one second. But yeah, I posted this market update 12 hours, querying to us whether we were about to see a monumental bear market crash. And unfortunately, 12 hours later, we had the greatest crash and liquidation event in cryptocurrency history. I shouldn't probably laugh about it, sorry, but I just do find the timing quite funny given the liquidation event. But yeah, it explored that notion of the cycle, how we have periodic cycles based on the halvings, based off retail FOMO bubbles, so on and so forth. But obviously the main difference now being the macroeconomic conditions are vastly different. So I explored that in the last update and why I believe the cycle is going to continue. But this update post-crash, which I'll go through in a bit, but it mainly, if you do want to get a chance to even get that up on a second screen, if you're watching the live stream, but it explores the notion of Bitcoin lagging behind the commodities in that debasement trade. Not necessarily lagging, but in a sense of being a risk-on asset that has higher beta returns to these type of assets. You know, gold, for instance, is up. Silver is up 85% this year. Gold is up 60%. And if we look at Bitcoin, which I don't actually show in this entire market update, it's only up about 20%, because if you remember at the end of 2024, start of 2025, we're around about at 100K. So give or take 20%, 10 to 20%, whatever it is right now. Actually, sorry, we're about at the low 90s from memory, I think. So in any case, this is what this market update looks like, reaffirming my viewpoint and my thesis that this cycle isn't quite done yet, despite the the cyclical nature and even this liquidation drop, and that using gold, and I will go over this a bit more, but I'm just speaking generally now, as a kind of front-running commodity that we will gap up in Bitcoin soon enough. I do believe the liquidity cycle will still play out as I proposed in that research report, and then from there, really it's about seeing Q4 and Q1's fireworks. I've obviously showed you guys the seasonality behind a lot of those things, but yeah. Open queue, not to go too heavy too soon when it works. I don't think the flow of Instacode is my own on-chain metrics. Yeah, good question. We can explore that a bit later. I think from memory, Aaron, I'm not sure if you read this last market update that I did last week, but it actually does explore that. So if you go to this, I will just quickly answer it because I did answer it in this, Aaron. So I spoke about bull market peak indicators, on-chain indicators in the last update. And I spoke about these three, the ones that you just saw then, and then obviously piqued your interest on that question. So I said that 0 of these 30 metrics are at the sell or at their top indicator, despite them hitting those top indications every other time periodically and cyclically as the days have shown. And I actually spoke about this as a, sorry, I shouldn't call you as I've just assumed a nickname, Aaron, I'm sorry. But you can go and read about all of this and me talking about this. So I think that's probably best to do, unless you did read it and it didn't make sense. But I went into great detail about how the macro tailwinds are different. And largely the ETF, whilst it has changed things, it shouldn't change those on-chain indicators anyway. But it's a good conversation to have, regardless. Maybe something we can explore a bit more later in the live stream, as I got a bit sidetracked then. But really, what I wanted to start with was talking about, obviously, the crash that happened, because that would interest people. G'day, Jace. And going from there. So, for those that obviously didn't know, I did put it in here, but on last Saturday, I'm sure you did know, we experienced a sharp flash crash, which ended up actually being well, you actually don't know the estimates because some exchanges actually underreport their liquidations, but I would say it's anywhere between 20 to $40 billion was liquidated from the cryptocurrency market, which is the largest single day liquidation ever recorded. To put this in perspective, and I know a lot of you, well, not a lot of you, but some of you were here for FTX, some of you were even here for COVID, but I remember the FTX one very, very clearly, and it just felt like everything was going to zero. But we were deep in a bear market then, so we were already Sorry, my headset shut off for a little bit there. But in the FTX, I can't remember the exact figure. I think it was something like 1.5 to $2 billion was liquidated from the cryptocurrency market. To put things in perspective, so this was 10 to 20 times bigger than FTX. So what was it primarily ignited by? By now you should have read that it was ignited by President Donald Trump's late fight and social media post threatening 100% tariff on Chinese imports starting in November 1st, I think. It was just a threat, not an actual announcement, well, not an official inputting. And this is, funnily enough, as I said, he usually has this playbook, Trump, where he does this after stock markets close, so they're unaffected, and cryptocurrency is the only market open to fully bear the brunt of such an announcement. And so obviously what happened is, I think, sorry, the markets were just closing, and obviously futures open on the stock markets, but audio is echoey. Let me see if that... Let me know if you can still hear me, because there was 2 mics clicked on OBS. So let me know if that's changed, Aiden. But it might just be you, because anyone else hear that? Let me know if you can still hear me, because I just turned off a microphone then, but left on my audio input capture. Yeah, Stan, SBF. Good old SBF. Oh no. What about now? Is it clearer now that I turned off the... Oh, okay, cool. Oh, okay, good. Good. Yeah, there were 2 microphones on then, guys. Sorry. The start of the live stream was sound like crap then. Yeah, cool. Alrighty, so obviously what happened from there is cryptocurrency markets bore the brunt of that, and yeah, it really spilled over. I put in a really, really good article here. I think it's going to go a lot over your head. It's very intense and very to do with trading and finance knowledge, but really what happened, as I always say to you guys, is weekends have very thin order books, they have very thin liquidity, as there's no ETFs trading, there's no institutional trading, there's no TradFi trading. It's just us at our computers on the weekend trading. And essentially what happened is that tale-old story of what I tell you guys is you need to understand that we're spot investors in this market, but majority of the trading or the volume made up in this market is perpetual futures trading. And it's why this cycle has been so vastly different to other cycles, because in 2017, we had 200 coins to choose from. 200, think about 200 coins to choose from total. Let's just say it was 500, whatever, a couple hundred coins to choose from. We had no access to leverage or perpetual futures. You couldn't just go to Bybit. You couldn't just go to Hyperliquid and size yourself up 100x on Bitcoin, drop a couple $100 and trade a full Bitcoin in size and hope for the best and get liquidated and try it 100 times over until you lose all your money. There was no degenerate gambling. There was 500 coins or so. It's this fragmentation and dilution I talked about in that prior research report, the first one about this cycle. And it was this type of shit. Like you would get a 50 to 100x in a week because people couldn't hunt liquidity, you couldn't do these type of things. And that's why these events are so vicious in this day and age. It's because of that 200 to 200x leverage available on some platforms, which, yeah, really created a domino effect. So what happens is, majority of the people trading this market that you see in alts, and the reason why alts go up, they're not spot buying alts like us. They're perpetual futures and they're leverage trading them. What happens is they have a certain liquidation price because none of them use stop losses, and this is something that we heavily teach in the advanced trading course, risk management, sizing only 1 to 2% risk, so on and so forth. But they'll full port something on a leverage trade, and then as prices fall, they'll get liquidated. And what happens is price just keeps tumbling as it keeps hitting all these sell orders, which is what a stop loss or a liquidation is. And as noted here, that over-leveraged longs were automatically liquidated. This flooded the market with sell orders and worsening the downturn. So yeah, this article here, I won't go over it now, but it really talks about how this type of thing can happen and can spiral so badly with market makers, obviously hedging both ways, but having to arb as well. But what happens is in these thinned order books, these exchanges have something called auto deleveraging. And what happened is your stop loss or something might not have been hit, but it forcibly closes a profitable position to cover other losses, particularly if you're on cross margin. So yeah, as you can see, all of these, like you could have been short in the event and your position could have closed. It's crazy. So
hedge portfolios were all stopped out, and this is just how this crazy event happened and how we had the worst one in history. So yeah, if you go to the market update, I explain all of that. But before I move on, are there any questions about, g'day Pete, any questions about the crash, the specifics of it? Do you guys want to know any more about it? Because in the next part of this is what I'm going to teach you guys is there seems to still be some confusion about dollar cost averaging and how to do it, at least via the charts or through limit ordering. So what I might do here is I might just I'll get up CoinStash. I'm just gonna buy, sell, swap. Is there any questions though before I move on? I'll wait like another 30 seconds to a minute. About the crash, no questions? That was like the suit's picking up some shit. Stan, you sure hate the suits. Every time I post an ETF article, you're vomiting over it. You really, really hate TradFi. But hey, you're a full-blown Bitcoin nuff. I appreciate it. I respect it. I'm the same. I just want them to pump my bags. Alrighty, we'll move on. No questions about the deleveraging event, but one of the most important places you can go, especially if you're a newcomer and you're at this live stream, but even also, is go to the research reports. The onboarding goes through these very specifically. I figure most people may skip over the onboarding because they don't think it's important. It is. It tells you several different ways you can teach yourself how to take profit using technical analysis, using periodic ways, selling at certain percentage levels, so on and so forth. That's a super important one for obviously upcoming period, even because you don't have to copy me. You can actually do it based on your own risk profile, which is actually what I recommend you do, not copying me. And the same goes for buying. We're all at different stages. As I almost say this almost at every live stream, the hardest thing about this job isn't the charting, isn't the investing, isn't the deleveraging events. It's the fact that I have to cater for all of you. Some of you have been with me since July in 2022. Some of you joined in 2023, some in 2024, some yesterday, some 6 months ago. You all buy at different times. You'll buy at different entries to me. So it's really hard to do it perfectly for you all. But that's exactly why it's best to approach it strategically in your own way that best suits you, that makes sense. Now, the reason why I wanted to bring this up, so I was getting up CoinStash, is buy, sell, swap. So I've got CoinStash here. I'm just wondering, but we'll get to it quickly. But the process of dollar cost averaging accumulation and dollar cost averaging. So you may have seen that I personally had 2 orders that hit in the deleveraging event. I'm kind of filthy. I didn't have more, but that's okay. I had them on Hyperliquid. They were never hit. Unfortunately, my ones on Hyperliquid were at like $8 and $7 from our old strategy. Hyperliquid only got to $20, which is still crazy in itself. I had ones on Link. When we bought Link in April at the April tariff lows at $10.01, I set another Link DCA order in case we were going to drop from there because I didn't know if we were or not. At $8.20, and I did the same with Ondo. Now, I know Rick and a few others and a few people kept them there with me and they got them. That's great, but a lot of people didn't. I was asked several times in the Discord whether I was keeping them, and I said, yes, I am going to keep them because we never know what's going to happen. I don't need that capital right now. I'm just going to leave them, so on and so forth. And look, it worked out fine. I got Link at $8.20. Ondo, I think it was at 59 cents. So they're both up really nicely right now. But the important thing is I figured that a lot of you are either periodically dollar cost averaging or kind of just doing it by feel. And not many of you how to do it via the charts and the zones, at least, that I'm kind of portraying. So let's get up the zones first and foremost. We can actually, if I go to the research report here, actually, this is why this was so important. This was less than a few weeks ago. And it encompassed every single DCA zone and accumulation zone DCA zone and accumulation zone. So what you could do is, even on, if we're looking at Bitcoin, right? And I said, look, I think we can get some dips. I think the absolute worst dip when you posted them, but ended up removing them a few minutes later. I felt like the money had been wasted on them. Kill myself now. Damn, that's all right. And look, there's different situations here. A few people actually said the same. Headset, and it seems to turn off every 10 minutes. I have no idea why. But yeah, sorry. Kind of lost my trail of thought, but yeah, it happens. People, you need money also. I didn't. I was lucky. People like Rick and obviously stuff didn't either. But back to what I was talking about. So this is super important. When I send something out like this and you're someone that's like, okay, well, and the number one question people always ask me is when they join, particularly when prices are high, is, oh, well, you've got the zone down here and you've said that this is the support and it's never going to reach that. So, and they get really impatient. I remember very specific examples of a couple of you doing this actually, and just complaining about, entries. And we are 3 years past where I got some of the entries on Chainlink. You can look at, any coin, almost any coin, altcoin that I invested in 3 years ago touched the entry that I got. And if you had simply placed limit orders for those entries, you would have the same entries as me 3 years later in the peak of a bull run. So in any case, I'm going to go back over this because I posted this a month ago, pre-Q4, and I said, these are the levels that you should be setting orders at, that you should be identifying that if we do reach those levels, you should invest in the coins. And most of them were above those levels. So really, so for Bitcoin, for instance, I spoke about it and I said, if we do lose 110K area, it's going to be that 103K area that I see us going. And it's pretty much where we went, right? For F, I spoke about that Bitcoin level way more specifically in the market updates, as you know, over and over and over and over, 103K. You guys saw it heaps. I've mainly spoke about F, that if F lost any next SR flip under us, it would be hitting that 3,300 level. So if you set limit orders at 3,300, which I know a few of you did for Ethereum, it would have hit perfectly. There's going to be ones that they didn't hit. So we take a look at F. The accumulation and DCA zone was a bit different. It's a bit lower, namely because we're at that kind of stage of the cycle where, if Ethereum's $4,500, even $3,500, it doesn't have probably as much upside as other alts, even though I think it should be a large core holding of your portfolio. Solana, look, even the Solana case, right? So I want to get up trading. I haven't actually been looking at Solana recently, but if we go to Solana, and I said, that level of support there should be an extra level of a zone. And I stated, if you were desperate to add more and we saw a significant bounce from the 150 area, great area to add. And, this is the live chart of Solana. It perfectly came into that zone, perfectly came out, right? So I can almost show you every example, right? Even in Hyperliquid, like it dipped right into this extra zone, right into the accumulation zone, and is already back above, around $40. So on and so forth. I don't have to almost show every example, but I did want to show you guys that it's possible and that everything's possible in crypto. These liquidation events happen almost once a year, or even a couple times a year sometimes. So you really need to make sure that you're prepared, both capital-wise, because things move so fast, as you know, particularly in these events. So what I want to show is, if you were someone that was like, okay, let's just take Chainlink, for example, right? You've looked at Chainlink, and you've gone, all right, Mitch's dollar cost averaging area is down from $10 down to $5. So if I have enough Link, but, I do want a little more. So if I want to go on Link, I actually have to show Bitcoin because I have no money in CoinStash. I'm unsure if it'll work on something, but I'm going to use Bitcoin as the example. Let's just say this is Link and you're buying it at whatever. You go to CoinStash, right? And you just go on the normal buy button. But what most of us do is we do buy. It's on instant on CoinStash. On other exchanges, it's actually usually on limit automatically. But it's on instant. So what will happen is if you're on instant, and you've probably done this on everyone on CoinStash, and you've gone buy amount, I'm going to buy $1 billion, $1 trillion of Bitcoin, buy instant. Okay, yeah, they're not going to quote me on $1 trillion Bitcoin. So let's just say $100 of Bitcoin. You buy Bitcoin, it buys it for you instantly, the market order, and it'll just match you with the first instant market order, right? But what you want to do in dollar cost averaging based on technical analysis, based on support zones, my DCA zones, or whatever, if you want to set this up now in the future, you go to buy limit. And what this does is you're able to set a specific price of a token or of an asset that you want to specifically buy at a specific price. So if Bitcoin drops to, and let's just say this is in USD, I know it's not, but let's just say you read my research report and you're like, okay, well, Mitch has identified that, you know, if we are ever to lose major support or trend on Bitcoin, he thinks it's going to 103,000. I trust his judgment a little more than mine. I want to purchase 100 AUD worth of Bitcoin if it ever touches 103,000. It shows differently on this chart. But if we were to go to Bitcoin, and in any case, whatever, it touched it on certain exchanges, right? So you might have been lucky to be good enough to be filled on that. If I go to trade, so I thought I might have to have money in here to look at these, but link. So in the links case, I probably should have shown this on a try and get up on Bybit, see if it's a bit clearer. But in any case, is this all making sense, guys? Is for people that didn't know are watching it. So you go to Chainlink, you go to buy limit. Okay, I would have set it to $8.20. So obviously USD, not AUD, because whatever the equivalent, let's just call that 14 AUD. And I would have said I want to purchase, let's just say my units are $100. Or let's just say they're $500, 2 units. I want to purchase 2 units of Chainlink as a DCA ever drops to 14 AUD. On that liquidation event, I would have got filled as price dropped all the way to 12. And now it's rebounded to 28 plus, right? And so as a result, I'm now up over 100% on a dollar cost averaging investment. And I've also heavily lowered my average buy by just preparing these dollar cost averages through technical analysis, through the zones that I show. And I'm guessing a lot of you would have asked yourself, why are these zones so low? Like, why aren't they up high? Because that doesn't logically make sense from a valuation perspective, but more so that I know these vicious drops happen in cryptocurrency, particularly in altcoins all the time. You know, I've been doing this for however many years, and it's just how the market works. So I just wanted to show that. I just wanted to go over this research report, why it was so important. You know, you could have chose Asta, you could have chose Pepe, you could have chose almost any of these zones, Potenza, and it doesn't matter which one it was. If you had done it based off the technical analysis, and I'm best guessing most that do it try to kind of do it live as if we were to slowly creep into the zone. So it's best to have some of those limit orders. So yeah, in the case of events like this that happen. But a reminder of these research reports and why they're so important, to go over all of them if you ever have any questions. You guys can always ask me to do certain research reports on something that I'm happy to do, on a theory, a thesis, a topic, whatever it is, and I'll do it. But that's the crash. That's how to approach it with limit buying, dollar cost averaging, why these research reports are so important. I give those zones in the investments tab as well. They're provided for you, which I'll update fully tomorrow. And then we'll get back to updating coins as well. But does anyone have any questions about that? Is anyone slightly confused? Or does that make perfect clear? Even better if a few of you can say that makes perfect sense. Thanks. Just so I can move on. Also, like I've been saying, guys, any questions at all that you guys have about this live stream, shoot them through. Also, Cal, can you tell me why the headset turns off every 20 minutes? Perfect sense. Sweet. Thank you, Jack. Thanks, Braden. Thank you, everyone. Alrighty. So moving on to the market update. As I said, if you guys want to revisit this in writing and read more specifically on it, I provided that article that talks about the liquidity vacuum and crypto's $19 billion collapse, how the market makers became the market breakers. That's actually something I'll send through to you, Jack. You were asking me yesterday about market makers, Mr. Jack, so I'll send that through to you. As you said, your finance literacy wasn't quite up to par, but I'm sure I'm sure you'll be able to read this. But really, as I said, yeah, so this is a different market update. It doesn't have your Bitcoin, your Ethereum, your altcoins. It must be nearly dead, yeah, Brandy. But really what this goes over is looking at that debasement trade that I spoke about before, looking at how Ethereum and once again, Moose, your line of questioning depends on the individual, and I know you hate when I say that, but like, are you asking if you've already got 90%? Like, I would just do it based on the prices and the units that you want to put into the coin. So there's no such thing as percentage of units keeping back. Always put in what you can afford to lose, but you might want to DCA more aggressively, you might not. I'm just saying, you know, those are the zones that I'm giving you the valuations to buy the coins at. So it's up to you whether you want to set those limit orders and you want to be able to patiently wait for that and bear the risk of maybe missing them or not. But this is why I say, for me, the best approach is buying some of all of the coins in the high conviction investments. That's what I would do. And then I would set limit orders, or because what the issue, well, not the issue, but most of you periodically dollar cost average anyway, so this is irrelevant. Most of you find that more simple. That fits your risk profile, suits your capital needs. But if you're someone that wants to do it based on support and technical analysis, then I would do it based on your current predicament and how many units you have in the market, how many more units you want to get into the market, so on and so forth. So I guess it's just what you can afford to do, Moose. It's no such thing as percentage. It's just what fits your current risk profile and the current units you have in the market. So let's go over the debasement trade. For those that don't know what the debasement trade is, it's a Wall Street term that's actually been popularized a lot recently. Is helium a good buy? Right? I'm not sure. Okay, helium's coming out, Cardano's coming out. We're getting to the silly part of the stream, aren't we? Continuing on. It's an investment strategy where people are shifting, you know, capital into assets that are perceived as resistant to currency devaluation, particularly amid obviously rising government debts, inflation, fiscal deficits, concerns. And really, the easiest way to explain it is the debasement trade is trying to escape fiat. Now, obviously, if you read I went over this in the update last week. I did a news article about it too that I just showed before. But really, it's that hedge against the erosion of the purchasing power that we have in traditional currencies, whether it's the AUD, whether it's the US, whether it's the euro, the yen. And really, it's just, driven by that fear and the exact reason as to why a lot of us are big Bitcoin believers, why Stan's a big Bitcoin believer, because we know the tokenomics and the scam of the fiat monetary system is not going to uphold, and it's going to blow up eventually. And that's why we seek haven in an asset like Bitcoin that has a fixed supply, that, you know, is a hedge against inflation, that is something that we know can't be meddled with the tokenomics, that can't be printed, so on and so forth. So why is this relevant to us now? Well, obviously we're seeing the global political tensions that are occurring between, you know, whether it's China and US trade war, whether it's Russia and Ukraine war, whether it's Israel and Palestine and Gaza region, so on and so forth. Central banks printing money, you know, record levels of debt, you know, and I think that's an important line here. With little political will to curb spending, we've seen Elon and Trump have a massive blow up about that this year. They just refuse to stop spending, the US, and never will. So so, you know, it's not purely just about M2 money growth, and, you know, it's not as simple as getting up the M2 chart and Bitcoin's chart. You know, it's more about this. People are really seeking safe haven in Bitcoin and in gold and in silver and in the S&P 500, so on and so forth, because they're hard assets that can't endlessly be created, printed, or devalued at such a rate, obviously, that the fiat system can. But that's why gold, silver, and Bitcoin come into this update. So they play a huge hold here. Obviously, gold is a traditional safe haven. Silver often follows gold. It's kind of like its little brother. Think of silver as kind of like Ethereum, I guess. And then Bitcoin can obviously be used as the digital gold due to its fixed supply of 21 million coins. Obviously made all-time highs last week, but it's, yeah, issuance rate is really low. It's scarcer than gold in some views. It's a non-debatable asset, so on and so forth. So what's happening at the moment is this debasement trade is people fleeing out of, the fiat monetary system and getting into Bitcoin, and that is a really huge thesis for you to be investing into Bitcoin and why you should be holding it long term. So with gold and silver continuing to go parabolic, like this, how do I see this playing out for Bitcoin in coming months, given it's lagging? Well, with its fixed supply, with all of these fundamental differences, gold has always been the go-to safe haven asset that has a market cap of 28 trillion, but Bitcoin is is barely anything of that. We're 2.36 trillion, so less than 10% of the market cap. Now, I'm not going to argue, gold has been around for thousands of years. It's obviously had a much larger place in not only economic history, but world history, political history. So we've got a bit to go, but, I can't, a big thing for me in Q4 and Q1 2026 for crypto, not just Bitcoin, but which should help crypto, but for Bitcoin specifically, is that we should be able to close this gap a little more. And I argue, that percentage of that market cap is a bit too low because of certain fundamental advantages. So the reason why this is bullish for us in the short term, at least, is because we can point to historical patterns on the Bitcoin gold chart where you can price Bitcoin in gold, and you can actually see that it has periods of huge outperformance against gold. But what happens is usually gold outperforms first in times like right now, which then precedes a massive Bitcoin rally. So if I show you on the chart here, and we can actually just get this up live, I don't need to actually open the images. We'll get this up on a log. Oh, that was on log scale the whole time. What it was. If I show you this chart, right? So this is the Bitcoin in gold chart. You can see that ever since we made an all-time high on the Bitcoin gold chart in 2021, that we've failed to really ever outperform gold in that sense. Like we have, we've outperformed gold since the November lows by 200%, but that's because we crashed so hard, right? So every single time we've made an ath, we've rejected this resistance. So I was looking at this chart and I was theorizing myself and I was understanding what was happening. And really, I think the biggest fireworks and the biggest stage of Bitcoin to end out this cycle is when it actually begins outperforming the hardest, most sought after asset on earth, which is gold. It's done it every other prior time in huge bull runs, but at the moment, despite us being in very favorable conditions, it isn't outperforming gold. So you can see in 2021 when we made aths, it outperformed to that, and then we made this resistance. 2024 March ath, we started to outperform it last year, late December, if you remember how hysterical and everything was just going up. So that should really, this price action here should give you an idea of what an alt season and what a massive crypto season looks like. It's really from that, September, Trump elected in here somewhere, favorable, regulations, sorry, I shouldn't swear, strategic reserve, so on and so forth. And you can see, so what I'm hoping for is if we get this, show you guys a cheeky trading view trick, is that I want Bitcoin to eventually rally back against gold in coming weeks when things settle and this trade war is probably in Trump's bluffed and so on and so forth, and we can continue October and Q4, is that we see a huge outperformance where investors at the peak of this liquidity cycle and the peak of euphoria, which we should see in coming months as per my research report and thesis, I can obviously be wrong, but this is the hope, is that people begin taking profits not only in the stock market, in gold, in silver, but happens every other time prior, and they begin seeking haven in what is the best risk on higher beta asset of Bitcoin. And we see true outperformance to new heights, which should propel Bitcoin to anywhere between 150 to 600K. I know that sounds silly, but if you base it on some certain mathematical frames, you can get those calculations. And really, I want to see Bitcoin really out to perform other commodities in this debasement trade, and everyone beginning to seek, that need that Bitcoin, the need of Bitcoin in their portfolios, because you need to understand that once Bitcoin runs, it runs. We've seen it multiple times. I think if it gets over this large hump, that's kind of this consolidation just above 100,000, let's call it between 100 and 120,000, that it really begins to run fast, and that's going to happen when it begins to finally outperform Bitcoin and silver. And so really that's my thesis that I explore in this market update. this catch-up dynamic. Now, what can it be driven by? Fundamentally, capital rotation, as I said, as gold prices surge, blah, 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 blah. Power law modeling, this is the mathematics that I was talking about, and market cap parity projections. But really, yeah, the explanation of it is clear. We've had 58% versus 20% also this year. And this is what I'm looking for. I believe that gold can keep going up, and it can certainly keep going up, and just Bitcoin goes up at a higher rate. And I'm talking that as part of this thesis of mine into Q4, into Q1 2026, because at the moment it's capped in terms of gold. But the core idea is that Bitcoin as the digital gold will catch up and eclipse gold performance in the and so what happens is, usually in the past that we've seen, is that gold often leads the rallies as a low beta hedge, followed by Bitcoin's high beta surge. So in 2017, gold rallied modestly before Bitcoin went on a 20x. In 2021, the last bull market, gold saw a 35% gain before Bitcoin went to pump 350%. So yeah, that's essentially what I'm saying here, and what I'm showing is that if history is to repeat itself during these type of periods, this gold rally is awesome, silver rally is awesome, but I think it ends with Bitcoin shining the brightest and rallying the hardest. And you can add this into the research report I've shown with the liquidity cycles, the extended super cycle, the core on-chain metrics, so on and so forth. But yeah, that's really the core thesis of it. So I guess, like the last, limit order buying at dollar cost averaging. Does anyone have any questions before I move on to maybe some live charting in the Q&A? And maybe some discussion around portfolio construction and allocation. I'll check if anyone has a question. Not many questions today. That's okay. Alrighty, we'll actually, let me see. I'm actually a bit behind on the live stream. Oops. Alrighty, we'll move on. Quickly, just my brief thoughts on the market, which I'm actually thinking of doing a separate market update tomorrow, which will look at Bitcoin, Ethereum, the total charts, Bitcoin dominance, Ethereum dominance, FBTC, and more as we approach the latter part of October that suddenly became Deathtober. But, so trading view is just lagging a bit here. Ooh. Really what I'm looking for on Bitcoin is that what we need to be careful of is, often you guys have probably heard the term of filling the wick, and we've got all these nasty wicks on Bitcoin, on Ethereum, so laggy, on Ethereum, that's Ethereum, you can see perfectly hitting a high time frame support. It doesn't matter what you look at, like you can see hyperliquids, right into that accumulation zone. It doesn't matter what I show. Towers was disgusting, but Towers had one of the great recoveries. But in any case, what sometimes happens in these huge liquidation events is, if you don't see an immediate, very big V-shaped reversal, which we kind of did see, but now the rally has flattened because China's come out to say they'll go do this trade war until the very end. Oh, you guys did ask questions. It just had nothing to do with the gold thing. Is XRP worth talking about? Sure. What would you like to talk about, Daryl? XRP is a token that should do very well in altcoin bull run, namely because of its marketing to unaware retail people that think it's going to be the next Bitcoin. I would propose to you that Bitcoin dropped 10% in the flash crash. I think as an XRP supporter, if you are one, I want you to tell me why XRP crashed 56%. If it's the future of finance. But in any case, I think XRP is, yeah, it is what it is, but it's a really good meme coin, and I think it will do very well, and it's made people a lot of money. I just don't like to invest or recommend other people invest in something that it doesn't do what it was set out to do. It traps retail through lying, through marketing, so on and so forth. It's just not what I'm into. So, yeah, take a look into it, Daryl. I actually had a really good chat with someone the other day that DM'd me about XRP, and I said, my opinion shouldn't matter to you. I said to him, you know, what you should do is you should go and research everything, because he was asking me if certain things were true about it. And I said, go and do the DD yourself. Go and research. So you'll see an ad, you'll see a TikTok reel, an Instagram reel, and it'll say, XRP has just signed a deal with Bank XYZ, and it could go to $10,000 tokens next month. And what I want you to do is go and research yourself. Get Google up, do some thorough research, and find out, and from reputable news sources, not XRP news sources, but go and find out whether it achieves these things, if those partnerships are in place, if it's mathematical. Get your calculator out, and the next time you see a video that says XRP is going to $10,000, get the amount of tokens that are with XRP and times it by 10,000, and let me know if that's mathematically possible. No, that's what I'm saying, Daryl. So with XRP, I think it's worth you going and researching it yourself, and then coming to the conclusion of whether or not it's worth investing in. Because my opinion is it isn't. But as I say to people, some people got upset in the past because price has gone up after I've said that. It's got nothing to do with price. So on and so forth. But go and do the research yourself and see what you come up with. Because every single person I've said this to as well, funnily enough, even people that have disputed me on it, I've said, go and show me, and no one's ever come back with anything just yet. So, anyways, Mitch, I've been digging on the last person I chatted. You're right. Nothing about I listened to it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So, how do you like to expect the flash crash to last? Mike, they're always permanent, those type of flash crashes, to be honest with you. The retail destruction of them. But this one is different because it happened in a bull market. I expect this to last a while. Not a while, I expect us to maybe chop for another week or two. Given we didn't V-shape reversal, that's kind of where I got distracted from. I looked at your guys' questions as I was talking about Bitcoin and filling the wicks. But what usually happens in these type of scenarios, because my trading view never seems to not freeze. There we go. Oh, no, frozen again. Sorry, guys. What happens is price usually tends to backfill these wicks. So price might come down. And what happens is it will fill that wick and then do the V-shape reversal if it doesn't do it immediately. So, I'm not opposed, and as I said, I'm being patient myself. I obviously, besides the orders that filled for me, have been, I kind of missed the immediate kind of pump rally, and I've been eyeing some newer coins anyway. But, I'm not really opposed to price doing this, and I've got an Elliott Wave idea and a few other ideas that I'll put in the market update tomorrow that I won't show you here. And if price does come down to here and fill though, that's where I begin buying a lot more alts. But for now, it's a bit of a tricky spot. The reason why I am slightly bearish and it looks like crap is that in the market update last week, funnily enough, 12 hours before alts crashed into absolute oblivion, if you had the chance to read that update on total 2, I showed this, right? This is the total market cap excluding Bitcoin, and we were actually up here last week, right? We were up here. So we were testing flipping our 2021 and 2024, late 2024 at all-time highs on the altcoin market. And we were looking to flip this to support and get continuation higher to new heights on our altcoins in Q4 and Q1. What happened was we had the liquidation event perfectly, and now we've lost this as support, and it's now turned back into resistance. So this actually does worry me a little bit. It's not overly concerning, but as a chart perspective and as a chartist, it looks like crap. As we're now well under 2021 valuations, well under late last year valuations. as every other asset class is at all-time highs, which isn't very nice, and we're sitting below them. But in any case, this is why it's so much more important to be parked in the right assets. So the exact same thing on Total 3, which is the same as the last chart, but then excludes Ethereum, is that we've got 2021 ATH that we perfectly made and back tested in late November, early January, inauguration, post-election. Then we've came up on 4 different weekly candles this last month, attempting to break out, and we just haven't been able to. And now we've bearishly back tested it and rejected. So those are the 2 main qualms of mine looking at altcoins for the moment, outside of Bitcoin. I don't think Bitcoin looks too bad, but these altcoins after that liquidation event, to answer your question, Mike, now that this has happened, we could see a bit of chop for the coming weeks. So best if you need to prepare for that, do so. But that's just on that at the moment. For Bitcoin in entirety, Mike, on the dumping today, first and foremost, there never has to be a reason for price dumping. I know people think that it has to be some massive news piece. Price can just sell off. People can be taking profits from the huge bounce. Like we not only crashed, but you got to remember that from the lows, we also bounced 10%. And a lot of people would be hedging their positions too. So a lot of people would be shorting just in case, they've got awesome entries, especially on alts, right? So the people long, or the boys that got filled on spot here, would they sell at 100% valuation? Probably. They made 100% in a couple of days type of deal. So it could last a little longer, Mike. I can't tell the future. I think tomorrow when I look specifically more at Bitcoin, altcoin, and ETH charts, we'll have a better idea. I'll show a few Elliott wave ideas that I've got in the mix. But at the moment, I expect this not to just magically V-shape reversal. Whilst I think, and I explained heavily, the buying opportunities that were there, I still think those are great. But, there is a chance that we can still chop back down before seeing much higher. So I will just quickly show the supports on Bitcoin, just briefly, given there's none included in the market update in case people wanted to know. But yeah, these are the ones on Bitcoin that I'm looking at the main level. So obviously we bounced perfectly from that level that I showed below the 108k level that I thought we'd bounce on, which was the 102 to 103k level. We have bounced perfectly from that for now, but under that is that weekly candle low sweep that would come into here and sweep that. And then there's obviously my last man standing kind of support down here. I don't think this comes into play. I think if we do fill out this wick, there's a chance that we can come into here, but I'll show those ideas tomorrow. ETH, it remains completely the same. We're back testing now that SR flip that was not lost until the liquidation event. So I really want to see this hold on Ethereum for now. Even on BTC, really want to see, I'll show quickly what I think can happen on BTC. But we've already touched that golden pocket yet again, bounced. But really, it's really that 3,300 level that needs to hold. Or that this is the one that aligns with, around 100k BTC. So, yeah, really want to see those levels hold. Not that they're going to come into play anytime soon, but I often say that. And then we have a liquidation event. So what I think can happen just on Bitcoin briefly for overnight people that want to know, if we do get slightly a little bit deeper, is actually going to the Bitcoin CME futures chart. As you know, we had the event going into the weekend. Sorry, we actually didn't. We actually had it close afterwards, sorry. But we had a gap appear from late September that never got filled. I think I was actually using this in my educational explanations to someone in the TA chat, if people read that. I was explaining gaps. And so, for instance, this gap we had, right? And you would never think, like, late December, November, oh my God, Bitcoin's just pumped from 77,000 to as high as 110,000. Oh, that CME gap that appeared, late last year, that's never going to fill. We're just going to go to 200k and price just gravitates back down, fills the order. Fills the order block, comes back up. And now we've got a pretty similar thing here on Bitcoin, right? Like we left that gap behind, we gapped up. I actually spoke about this gap, in the example, but when price was up here, we've come back down. So, what I want to see before 103k wick gets tested or refilled is that, TradFi, if they get the option to fill this gap, they fill the gap, might come sweep into the GP, sweep these daily candle and that weekly candle low, and then we bounce from there. So, That's just my brief idea for lower for now. If we do see it tonight, Mike, or anyone that's interested, definitely could be that CME gap fill before we see higher. So I think that's enough on charting and whatnot. I'll go back to the questions. What's at the dump? I have no idea. That's such as would it like to become better profit and ways to set up master blades. You want to become better at. So I think you might have joined this live stream late, but I was actually showing that at the start. Master blades. Sorry, I don't know you by name, but if you go to the crypto dashboard and you go to crypto. This should be on your onboarding when you first join. We have very specific links saying please read process of dollar cost averaging. So this will tell you how to buy. I hope you saw the limit buying that I showed before. Tell you how to invest in unit sizing, but what you're after is the process of profit taking. And I go into many details about how to base your profit taking. So based on your financial goals, your risk tolerance, your portfolio size, your market knowledge. I show how to set alerts. So you can set alerts on TradingView or on an equivalent kind of, price following application. And I talk about, strategies in detail. So I talk about different percentage based strategies. So you can sell 20% and 25% gain. So this is how to kind of dollar cost average out, using different levels, how to DCA out I show. So, showing at this, Fibonacci retracements and extension strategies. So this is mainly what I use, is technical analysis. So I show you a number of different strategies that you can use, and you'll go through this research report. It's quite intense. Well, not quite intense, but it's very deep, and hopefully you'll figure out a strategy that aligns with your risk profile, with your capital, with your portfolio size, how you feel, what your financial goals are. Everyone's different. So Mr. Masterblade 0221, let me know if that makes sense, and after you read that, just hit me up in the Discord for any questions at all. So I don't want to keep you guys too long. I did get through most of what I wanted to get through. We got through the Bitcoin gold thesis. We went through over the entire crash, how to set up limit orders on CoinStash, but really any exchange, it's the same thing. It's a limit order. You go to buy, you set your price, put the amount of cash in that you want to hold. That'll just sit on the exchange until it's filled, until you cancel it, and you can just get that money straight away back. We went over the Bitcoin gold thesis after we spoke about how the crash occurred. I've shown brief Bitcoin and Ethereum charts. Anything else that you guys want me to go over? Any charts, anything specific? Or is there any questions that anyone has? There hasn't been too many questions tonight versus prior. I think it's because the last one I held was the beginners live stream, so there were lots of questions from everyone. But in any case, I'll await you guys just if you have any questions, and we'll go from there. Chart related, and I assume that you've assumed that this kind of completely altered the path. My idea was to get to the latter weeks of October, when we were pumping. I mean, we're at all-time highs last week, and really that's where I wanted to see, as Bitcoin makes new all-time highs, is when you begin, and it gets a bit higher, not reject, is when we begin to see that rotation into altcoins. We didn't get that. I assume Aaron, is that you, Chris? I'm confused by the name. I assume it's Chris, but I'm not too sure. But yeah, it's now at the stage, Aaron or Chris or whatever. Sorry, I'll call you Aaron, given that your YouTube name is displayed as Aaron. Is that I was planning to really see, once we got into that euphoric Q4 October pumping stage of altcoins, which ones were underperforming. I was able to actually Okay, cool. It is Chris. So yeah, was waiting for that to happen, and then we got the liquidation event, which just thrown everything out the door. So time frame is I'm going to let this chop ensue, but really it's just on the next leg up. That's when it's going to happen. So it's been good to wait though. So for instance, one I was beginning to get a bit iffy and a bit impatient on was Tau, right? And we've seen what Tau has completely outperformed not only everything. Like this was the liquidation price. It was at 390. It's above where it was when Bitcoin was at 120k pre-liquidation. You can hardly say it for any alts besides maybe BNB. That's it. No other ones. So Tau's show me that immense streak that makes me want to hold it. That's why it was important for me to wait. The ones that I have mentioned. So Pepper. So for instance, FET. And you might argue like, oh, okay, well, like maybe it's just an AI thing, so maybe it's worth holding FET. And like FET's been the saddest story of my entire cycle in terms of my, and probably a lot of people here, well, not a lot, but some of my older members, is we bought this in the bear market of 2022 at 20. We bought buying it down here, man. We're buying it down here. And I want it to long-term hold, obviously, for the cycle. Until the end of the cycle where things really heated up, and I had big beliefs in AI, that AI was the future and it would be the next big thing. And so we're up at 10x more, 15x or whatever it was, 10x. We're now back down to entry. Look at that. So and I know probably should have taken profits, but hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? In late 2023, early 2024, I'm thinking we've still got a year and a half to go in this bull cycle. It's not even that large of a market cap. It can go higher. And it hasn't. So, but that's definitely something that's a g'day, Craig. Definitely something that's both a learning lesson, but difference in this cycle. But here it's more specifically in terms of our reconstruction and allocation. Is that this is something I'm going to reallocate now. I'm just going to get my units back. Because as I said, if you think of Tau, like maybe Tau's just performing because all other alts are. Nope. So no, all other altcoins are. Nope. So look, FET's down, 12% the last 24 hours. Tau's down, it's even. FET is down 40% the last 7 days. Tau's up 20%. It's down 50% the last 30 days. Tau's up 17%. So on and so forth. So, when I'm thinking about the construction of my portfolio in terms of artificial intelligence, there's no point in me holding this. When I've got more high conviction, I can see the performance in this. So that's something that we lost out on, and it's really unfortunate. But that's going to be one that's definitely going to happen. Pepe could definitely be another. Really wanted to see ETH get to 5k last, so you can see Pepe be able to get a bit of life there, but it's not. S is definitely another two, which is just even just as bad. We're 18 cents, 20 cents, 30 cents, $1.50 pre. Oh, this is just the Sonic chart. It was up here in late December last year when it was an inferior blockchain with inferior partners and inferior investors. It then turned into the fastest Ethereum blockchain on earth and has been down only. So you can't predict these things, but I'll get the post-mortem out on S soon enough for Cap and who else. Where are we, Craig? We are at the pinnacle of it, my friend. So I'll show you two different charts. So Bella, it's the same protocol for every other coin. First, I can't tell you to buy something or sell something. It's up to you completely. You really need to go and read the analysis. So first of all, I'd probably ask you, did you read the analysis on ASTA the other day? Your answer is probably no. I speak about it in that. I give you dollar cost averaging, I give you commentary, I tell you how you can approach it. And my recommendation in there is, if you're comfortable and you want to, is get an entry in ASTA at $1.35 or whatever. And like I was showing at the start of at the start of the live stream is you can set limit orders at lower levels, or you can manually do it when price gravitates lower, or periodically you can dollar cost average into it. So, if you had taken my advice on Asta, or not my advice, my recommendations on dollar cost averaging, and you would set limit orders between $1 and $1.30, where I said price will hit, if the market does tank. The market tanked all this spectacularly, and it went from $2 to exactly $1.15, and you would have picked up a few orders in that, and now you'd be in profits and you'd be sitting on a pretty comfortable entry. So my recommendation on Asta is to get an entry and then periodically invest over the next few weeks, over the next couple of months, whatever suits your comfortability. You need to go figure that out yourself, and then all set limit orders for lower. So it might be that you go on Asta, and it might be that you set a limit order at 90 cents, at $1, at $1, $1.10, and $1.20. The entry's here, and if these orders all hit, well, you'll probably get an average buy of around $1. But for me personally, I'm not investing further in Asta because we bought it at 30 cents. So there's really no point for me personally, to buy it or to. And I've also taken my initial investment out and profits and double my investment. So just sitting on it comfy for now. We'll see what happens. Obviously the buybacks happen. The airdrop is happening per the update. So, Lenny, no worries. Sorry. The YouTube is Bella does music. So yeah, go and read that update too, Lenny. Go and read the update on Asta. I give full commentary and information about what I think price will do. I think it'll really help you. Quickly, Craig. Where are we in the halving cycle? Good question. We are at the end of the cycle, Craig, per halvings. So we are at the very end of it, and I'll show it with this as well. Oh, how's that for a double chart? So, yeah, Craig, if you missed it or whatever, I would really go and read. I actually think you'll find both of my recent market updates quite interesting, Craig. Skip to the end of the last week's one, and I talk about cyclically how from bottom to top is always exactly 1,064 days. Top to bottom is always exactly 371. That has happened all of Bitcoin's infancy. Yes, I know it's a simulation and it's crazy, but that is the truth. I'm showing you that live. It's not exact. These are weekly candle bars, so it's slightly off, but pretty much the exact same amount of time. So yeah, if I was, and as I proposed in the market update, if we would go 300, if that was the top, which 12 hours later we dumped, the largest dumping we've had in cryptocurrency history, we would find the bottom of the market in October of 2026. Hopefully not that low, sorry, hopefully fairly higher, but I obviously don't think the cycles are a thing anymore. That's my current standing and opinion on that. But that's where we stand in terms of the halving cycle, Craig. We have completed it, and we are entering a bear market right now. I don't think we are, sorry, let me clarify that, per the prior cycle theory. And how different will this roll out? Yeah, so one chart that I think you missed it at the start, Craig, because you joined late, but the one chart I always used to I like to show is how different it is this chart. You can already see how different this cycle is, right? So when I showed you that prior, we can actually get up all of these. When I showed you the prior cycle, right, top to bottom, even with these dates, this is going to get a bit messy, but it's going to be a bit cool, is that blue part every time is a retail bubble forming, isn't it? So, and then it's got the retail crash of 371 days, but the difference being that this time, look at how different the rise in Bitcoin has been. It hasn't been the same parabolic nature. It's just been a slow grinding upwards ascending channel structure. So I think it's going to be vastly different. And that's why I think I've got some reading for you, Craig, if you want to catch up. But if you go and read my last market update, even if you go and read Craig, I just did a market update on Bitcoin versus gold. So this one here, Craig, I think this would be a really good read for you. I talk about the debasement trade, and I actually chart Bitcoin and gold to explain a few theories and what I want to see on Bitcoin to see us get a parabolic rise in Q4 and Q1. But also this research report here discusses institutional effect and why I think there'll be a longer super cycle. So there's some reading for you to do, my friend, my student. So do some of that and let me know what you think. Okay, that was Lenny. I've answered Craig. Jack does. I think probably better off allocating the units elsewhere, Jack. That's my honest opinion. It's had every catalyst come and go that I hoped for. As I said, I'm only human. I get some of them wrong. Down 50% on Asta, so on S, but up on Hyperliquid, Asta, Chainlink. So we're gonna get some wrong, and Sonic was one I got wrong. I just assumed, probably poorly assumed, that people would prioritize tech over hysteria and marketing. But if anything, XRP, as we explained before, XRP is the worst tech on earth. Not Ripple's not, but the XRP itself token is completely useless. But yeah, Sonic is a very tough one, Jack, because it's had every catalyst. It had the Coinbase listing, it upgraded to Sonic and became the fastest. It still is the most performant. Yeah, it is the most powerful blockchain still on the earth. It's never had any downtime. It's never had a transaction fail. It's flawless if you go and use it. I think the most devastating part about at least being a crypto native is you ask anyone that's gone and used Sonic, they'll tell you it's flawless. It's as quick as anything they've ever used. It's so much better than Solana, than Ethereum, than whatever it is. So it's had every catalyst come and go. The Cato campaign, so on and so forth, and it really just hasn't shown any life. And I think it's because of the nasty community, nasty strategy, nasty marketing it has going for it. Andre, the dev, is releasing Flying Tulip, which you might have seen me write or speak about. Yeah, I think it's probably better allocating. I'm gonna still wait a bit patiently, Jack. Maybe you can follow I don't know if you still hold it, or whether you did invest into it recently. But I do personally think it's better placed in certain high convictions such as Bitcoin, Ethereum, Hyperliquid, Chainlink, even Asta, Tau. I think these have more upside than Sonic does for now, but strange things have happened. So, can we receive text advising like we did for this live stream? The texts are quite expensive moves, but I'll look into that and I'll get back to you. I don't run the texting system or the emails and stuff. So, well, the text at least. Sorry, I do email you guys, but I'll find out for you, Moose, and I'll get back to you on that one. I think we can do that. We should be able to do that. Lenny, what's your thoughts on BTC following? Yeah, I've made my thoughts on that pretty known. I do like the correlation, but like any correlation, it always breaks. I'll see if I can get a live chart up of that to show you what I mean. But people think it's some magical correlation that always holds. Every correlation is a correlation, but it's not always perfect. So TXY and Bitcoin is a perfect one to explain. I wonder if I can zoom out enough on this to show you what I mean. Is that... so which one? What the fuck? You're on your growth rate, M2 money supply. So for instance, like, so this is where you can get caught out, right? So let me show you. I can't draw, but let me see. Right, so we've got this, right? We've got the correlation. Let me see if I can. This will make me draw on it. And it is correlated, right? And it is related, right? Because when you think about fiat money and the ever-expanding money supply, that people should be more invested and into Bitcoin. But what you need to understand is the money supply is almost virtually forever expanding. Yes, it has dips, but permanently up. It doesn't have large crashes like Bitcoin has. But I can show you here, right? So if you would believing in this correlation 1-to-1, 100%, it's always just going to follow. If you're at the top of Bitcoin in 2021, i.e. the last cycle and the last all-time high, M2 at the exact same time kept going up for months and months and months. Look, if I show you where, right, so that's into there. If I show you where it peaked, right, that's in like early 2022, March, April 2022 is when it began to eventually start rolling over. Interest rate cuts took effect, so on and so forth. So bloody hell. Yeah, it doesn't always hold up, particularly locally, but over the long term, Hassan, I do expect that correlation to obviously be forever growing. But as you can see, right, you can see here it just continues to go up. Here Bitcoin dropped a lot. Here it continued to go parabolic for some time. All Bitcoin did was chop down. So there's definitely a correlation, but it's not some magical correlation that crypto Twitter or an influencer on TikTok or whatever makes you to believe. It's there generically, and I do believe we will catch up to it. Yeah, hopefully that explains to you the correlation between it, but more importantly, there's not always a one-to-one correlation like a lot of other correlations. No worries, Moose. Still holding for now. When they bring in someone to try and improve the relationship with the community of the edge of a situation, that end up flopping as well. They did bring in someone called Jack Presley, who I actually know personally. Well, not know personally in person, but I've had a few conversations with him. It did help, but at the end of the day, Jack, you need to understand that the psychology and emotions of a community aren't based on announcements or whether people are happy with who came in or whatever. They only care about one thing, and that's token price. Which makes sense, of course, because, you know, their money that's being played with, well, not played with, but invested into something. So logically, the only thing they care about is token price. So if S can never, and this is where the team strategically got it wrong, is they said, well, people shouldn't care about the token price because of how flawless the blockchain is, and we're going to keep building. So they didn't put any care or love into strategies around token price or buybacks or doing things to solidly get investors in or whatever. And this is why I said, 6 months ago, I front ran them and said they need to pivot to institutional investing because they're never going to find the marginal buyers from retail. They don't care about technology anymore. And they have done it now. I don't know how successful that's going to be, Jack, and whether it's something you want to wait on the ETF and stuff. I'll do an update for Sonic soon. I'll make sure I do that for you this week, Jack, or maybe next week, before we decide to reallocate. And just get an update on where that sits with the ETF and with the institutional inflows. But once again, even in my mind, right, there's still that concern of they can get an ETF. It doesn't mean people are going to buy it. From a TradFi point of view, if I went to the Sonic chart and I looked at it, I looked at all these issues it had, and I went, well, who runs the project? And I went on Andre's Twitter profile, and I read that Andre doesn't give a shit about the community or the token price, so on and so forth. It's not a good look. So yeah, end of the day, I'm not too bullish on it right now, Jack, as I once clearly was. But yeah, the community helper or head of community didn't really help things, I would say. Yeah. Alright, I'll give it another minute or two. These have been great questions, by the way. There was a lack of questions at the start, but they've started flowing through, and these have all been real good questions. I might I can answer anything, whether it's about trading, investing, technical analysis, M2, Sonic, the service, buying, selling, profit, whatever. You can ask it. But I'll give it another minute or two before we wrap it up. I've taken a fair bit of your time. Oh, we've got 50 people here. Fantastic. Reached the half century. What I'll do tomorrow is I might do an update on technical analysis for Bitcoin and Ethereum, and then maybe do a bit more video analysis as well. No worries, Jack. Does Gandalf have a question? Oh wow, peaked at 72. Huge. What I actually did want to lastly finish on, I know some people have probably left. Actually, people have probably already left. That's okay. Is the importance of Discord. and reading this and sticking to the plan, but particularly this, I didn't try to toot my own horn, but I just want for those that have hung around is I understand how hard it can be in those liquidation events when you've never experienced them before. You might not want to listen to people, or you might not want to, you're not very rational with your emotions. Is that I've gone through 100 of these. I've been in this market for probably well longer than most of the people here. Is take this all into account. I'm not saying I'm always right, but I think it's important that, you know, when I say, when, you know, this was very, very early that morning when prices were still down, is that I see it as a buying opportunity, because what a lot of you would have done is you still would have hesitated. And I made it, you know, known that, you know, one of the best aspects of this service is that you've got experienced people that have been through this 100 times that are telling you, giving you at least guidance on what to do, because we've been through it and you haven't. So yeah, definitely with the Discord, if I'm giving you, you know, instruction or guidance and telling you what I think is going to happen, definitely take it into account. Then come to the TA chat and ask questions. Aiden, is this a replay live? Jesus. So yeah, definitely take into account the Discord. Looking forward to hopefully doing a few more of these, given that, you know, we got so many people here this time, which was great. And we will go from there. But thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate, you know, taking almost an hour and a half out of your time on a Tuesday night, when you've all got families, jobs and things to do. Hopefully that clarified a few things on the crash, on how I see Bitcoin catching up with gold, how to use limit orders to DCA. We even went over some profit taking, so on and so forth. So have a good night, everyone. I appreciate it, and I will see you in